Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep into food safety and specifically in the catering industry.
Yeah, we all love to go out to eat, right? But most of us don't think too much about, what it takes to keep that food safe.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot more to it than you might think. To help us break it down, we're looking at this online course on Allison called HACCP Food Safety System for restaurants and other catering services.
It's a really interesting course. Whether you work in catering or just like to eat out, I think anyone listening will learn something new.
For sure. So let's start with the basics. Why is food safety so important in catering? I mean, it's a huge industry, right?
Yeah.
Millions of meals every day.
Oh, absolutely. And if something goes wrong with food safety, the consequences can be huge.
Like what? What kind of
I mean,
consequences are we talking about?
well, think about it. Imagine you're catering a big event, like a wedding. Hundreds of guests, everything's going great, and then a few days later, people start getting sick.
No.
Right. It turns out there was a food safety issue in the kitchen. Now you're not just dealing with upset stomachs. You're dealing with lawsuits, a damaged reputation, maybe even having to shut down your business.
Wow, that's serious. So
Yeah.
it's not just about a few unhappy customers. It could actually ruin the whole business.
Exactly. That's why having a system like HACCP is so crucial. It stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. It's a globally recognized system for identifying and controlling food safety hazards at every step of the process.
Okay, so when we say hazards, what exactly are we talking about here? Give me an example. Like what could make my delicious catered lunch a danger zone?
Well, there are three main types of hazards. The first one is biological hazards.
Hmm.
These are things like bacteria, viruses, and parasites that can contaminate food if it's not handled properly, like undercooked chicken with salmonella or lettuce contaminated with E. coli.
Ugh. Okay, definitely not appetizing. And that makes it clear why this is way more than just, basic kitchen hygiene.
Right. Then you've got chemical hazards. These can be things like cleaning chemicals getting into the food, or pesticide residue on produce, or even undeclared allergens.
So those are things that can accidentally get into the food. But what about stuff that's already in the food?
Yeah.
Like,
You're thinking about physical hazards. Those are any foreign objects that could end up in your food.
okay, like hair or piece of broken glass.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these three types of hazards: biological, chemical, and physical.
Mm.
All things that can sneak into our food at any stage. But I'm guessing HACCP isn't just about, magically knowing where these hazards are. There's got to be a system, right?
Absolutely. Before you even get to the core principles of HACCP, you need to lay a strong foundation. And these are called prerequisite programs.
Prerequisite programs. So is this where the whole, like, wash your hands thing comes in?
Exactly. It's all about the basic practices that create a safe environment from the start. Things like personal hygiene, pest control, keeping the facility clean and sanitized, and proper waste management to prevent cross-contamination.
Got it. So it's like setting the stage for safe food handling before you even start cooking.
Exactly. HACCP builds on these fundamentals, but it goes further by actively identifying and controlling hazards at every step of the process.
And this is making me look at my own kitchen differently.
So once those prerequisite programs are in place, what happens next? Well, there are actually 5 preliminary steps you need to take before you dive into 7 principles of HACCP. Think of these steps as like planning out your blueprint.
5 preliminary steps. Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear them.
So first, you need to put together your HACCP team. This is a group of people with expertise in different parts of your food operation.
So like the chef, the prep, cooks, the servers.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone who plays a role in getting that food from the supplier to the customer's plate.
Makes sense. So everyone's on board and ready to tackle food safety. What's step 2?
Step 2 is all about understanding your food, like really getting to know it.
Okay, so we're talking recipes, ingredients, all that.
Yes, but also how it's packaged, stored, transported. You need to document every detail about your food and how it moves through your operation.
Wow, so it's about tracking every step of the way. And why is that so important?
Because it helps you identify any points where those hazards we talked about could sneak in. Think of it like a detective gathering clues.
Okay, I like the detective analogy. So what's the next clue?
Step 3 is all about figuring out how the food will be used and who's going to be eating it. Is it going to be cooked or served raw? Are you serving it to a general audience or to a specific group like kids or seniors?
I see. So you're tailoring the food safety plan to the people who will be eating the food.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
You wouldn't handle food for a daycare the same way you'd handle food for, a fancy restaurant.
exactly. Different foods and different people have different needs. Now, step 4 is where things get a little visual. You need to develop a flow diagram of your entire food process.
A flow diagram, is that like a map of my kitchen?
It's more like a step-by-step roadmap of how the food moves through your operation from the moment the ingredients arrive to when the final dish is served. It helps you visualize every step and identify all the potential hazard points.
So every single step, receiving, storage prep, cooking, serving, it's all mapped out.
Yeah. And then finally, step 5 is to make sure that flow diagram actually matches what's happening in your kitchen. You got to verify it.
So it's not just a theoretical exercise. You're actually going in and observing the process, making sure everything lines up.
Absolutely. You don't want any surprises or gaps in your HACCP plan. So those are the 5 preliminary steps.
Wow, that's a lot of groundwork. It feels like we've already built a pretty solid foundation for our food safety house.
Exactly. Now that you have this strong foundation, you're ready to move on to the 7 principles of HACCP. Those are the guidelines that will really help you build a safe and sustainable system.
This is fascinating. I can't wait to hear about those 7 principles. We'll dive into that in the next part of this deep dive.
Sounds good.
Okay, welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we were laying the groundwork for a solid HACCP plan, talking about those prerequisite programs and the 5 preliminary steps.
Exactly. It's like we framed the house, now it's time to make it safe and functional with the magic of HACCP.
Yeah, I like that analogy. So last time we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, those 7 principles of HACCP. Let's hear what this magic looks like.
Okay, well, think of these 7 principles as the guidelines or like the blueprints for our food safety house.
Okay, blueprints for a safe house I'm following. So what's principle number 1?
Principle number 1 is all about hazard analysis. This is where your HACCP team puts on their detective hats and tries to identify all the potential hazards in each step of your flow diagram.
So we're not just talking about the general hazards we talked about before, but specifically where those hazards could pop up in my kitchen.
Exactly. You're looking at every single step from receiving ingredients to serving the dish and asking, what could go wrong here?
Okay, so let's say we've got this big, long list of potential hazards. Do we try to control every single one?
That's where principle number 2 comes in, identifying critical control points, or CCPs.
CCPs. Okay, what are those?
These are the points in your process where you can actually do something to prevent, eliminate, or reduce the hazard to a safe level.
So it's about focusing your efforts on the points where you can really make a difference. But how do you know which points are critical?
It's a combination of science and common sense. You have to think about which hazards are most likely to occur and which ones would have the most serious consequences.
So like washing your hands is important, but it's not a CCP because that's already covered by those prerequisite programs.
Right, that's a basic hygiene practice. But something like cooking chicken to the right temperature, that would be a CCP, because that's a specific point where you can eliminate the hazard of salmonella.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So once you've identified those CCPs, what's next?
Then you move on to principle number 3, which is establishing critical limits. For each CCP, you need to set specific measurable parameters that will ensure the hazard is controlled.
So instead of just saying cook the chicken thoroughly, you'd say cook the chicken to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
Exactly. It has to be specific and measurable.
Makes sense. So we've identified our hazards, pinpointed our CCPs, and set our critical limits. What happens next?
Well, now you need to make sure those limits are actually being met. That's principle number 4, establishing monitoring procedures.
Ah, so this is where we actually start putting things into practice.
Exactly. You need to figure out how you're going to monitor each CCP, who's responsible, and how often it needs to be checked.
So if our CCP is cooking chicken to 165 degrees, we need to make sure someone's checking the temperature regularly.
Right. And that monitoring can be done in different ways depending on the CCP. It could be temperature checks, visual inspections, time logs, whatever makes sense for that particular step.
Okay, I'm seeing how all these pieces fit together. But what happens if something goes wrong? Like what if the oven breaks and we can't cook the chicken to the right temperature?
That's where principle number 5 comes in establishing corrective actions.
Corrective actions. So it's like a backup plan.
Exactly. You need to have a plan in place for what to do if a critical limit isn't met. That way you can prevent unsafe food from reaching the customer.
So if the chicken isn't cooked properly, we might have to throw it out or cook it again.
Right. It's about having a clear plan so you can take action quickly and effectively.
This is all so thorough. I like it. We're identifying hazards, controlling them, monitoring them, and even having a backup plan. What else is there?
Well, we're almost done. Principle number 6 is establishing verification procedures. This is all about making sure your HACCP plan is actually working.
So it's not enough to just create the plan. You have to actually check and see if it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Right. You need to regularly review your plan and make sure everything's up to date and everyone's following the procedures correctly. This might involve internal audits, record reviews, or even testing food samples.
So it's like a checkup for your HACCP plan, making sure it's still healthy.
Exactly. And then the final principle, number 7, is all about documentation and record keeping.
Ugh, paperwork. My favorite. But seriously, why is all this documentation so important?
Well, it might seem tedious, but it's crucial for a few reasons. First of all, it provides evidence that your system is working, which is really important if there's ever an issue or an audit.
So if someone gets sick, you have proof that you were following the HACCP plan.
Right. It also helps you track trends, identify areas for improvement, and make sure everyone's on the same page.
So it's like a diary for your HACCP plan.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. It's a way to document the journey and make sure everything's running smoothly.
Okay, so we've got these 7 principles working together to create a comprehensive food safety system. What's next?
Well, now that we understand the principles, we can start talking about the benefits of HACCP for both businesses and consumers.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts building this, this whole food safety system with HACCP. We talk hazards, critical points, monitoring even what to do when things go wrong.
It's a pretty impressive system, right?
Yeah.
All those steps and procedures. It's all about making sure the food we eat is safe.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to get caught up in all the details.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about protecting people. And that's what I'm really curious about now. How does HACCP actually benefit both the businesses and the people eating the food?
Well, for businesses, HACCP can be a huge advantage. It's all about building trust with customers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
If I know a restaurant takes food safety seriously, I'm definitely more likely to eat there.
Right. And in today's world with online reviews and social media, a food safety scandal can really hurt a business. But if you have a strong HACCP plan in place, it shows you're committed to safety, and that can really boost your reputation.
It's like a seal of approval, saying, hey, we care about your health.
Exactly. It goes beyond just meeting the minimum requirements. It's about exceeding expectations and building a brand that people trust.
So it's not just about avoiding bad press. It's about building a positive reputation. That makes a lot of sense. But what about the benefits for the people eating the food?
Well, for consumers, HACCP provides peace of mind. You can relax and enjoy your meal knowing that the restaurant has taken steps to ensure its safety.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like taking the worry out of eating.
Exactly. You don't have to wonder if the chicken is cooked properly or if the salad is contaminated. You can just focus on enjoying the experience.
That's a great point. It's about creating a positive dining experience for everyone. And when people feel safe and confident, they're more likely to try new things and support businesses that are doing things right.
Absolutely. It's a win-win for everyone.
This whole deep dive has really been eye-opening. I'm definitely going to look at my next meal a little differently. Now I'll be thinking about all the work that goes into making sure it's safe.
I'm glad to hear that. Even though we don't always see it, HACCP is working behind the scenes to protect us.
So the next time you're enjoying a meal, take a moment to appreciate the invisible hand of HACCP at work.
And if you want to learn more about it, be sure to check out that Allison course we mentioned earlier. It's a great resource for anyone working in or interested in the food industry.
Definitely. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into food safety. But remember, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe. Until next time, happy eating, everyone.